Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut live stream. How you guys doing? I hope everybody's doing well. Well, before we get started, I'll update you on one thing. So I ordered a car, and finally I am ready to replace my 2012 Toyota Camry that got an accident. Hopefully, we are still on the September 22nd date where the car will all arrive. I will not share the car with you. You will that I will do as a surprise for you guys because you might not expect it. But it is a Toyota, that I can tell you. And as we go closer and closer, and as I am sure that it's actually going to show up, which I want to start the live stream with that. Folks, I love you, as you all, I hope you know that by now. But please do not overpay for new cars. Do not overpay for used cars. I am seeing so many people around me that buy used cars, buy new cars, and they're overpaying for them. Just remember, the shortage of cars right now is not going to be there forever. So whatever car you buy right now at a high price, a year or two from now, the prices drop and there's going to be abundance of cars, and you have all this money sunken into this car. It's just a loss situation. All cars depreciate, and that's normal. For please don't overpay for your cars. I'm seeing this a lot more and more, and thought I'd touch on this one more time so you would remember me saying this for all of you's sake, because I love you guys. Having said that, let's get started with the questions. So we got Robert Wiggins. Sorry if I said that wrong. 2012 Toyota Camry LE 105K. I have drained and filled the transmission fluid 5 times in the last 6 months. It is still very dark, as if it wasn't changed. I don't want to drive this. I want to drive this car for 300,000 miles. Let's clarify one thing about transmission fluid. Please don't do the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times until the fluid is red. Understand 2 things. Overdoing the transmission fluid is also not good for your transmission either. So a single drain and fill is good. The fluid, the Toyota WS fluid, it is dark naturally. I know you pour it out of the bottle, it looks red-ish. But if you actually look at old transmission fluid, it was a lot more red than the WS fluid. That is normal. With WS fluid, don't look at red or darker color. Look at smell and grittiness. That's how, if you're checking the fluid, if it needs replacement. But don't do the multiple fluid changes. It's actually not the greatest thing. So at this point for you, I would leave it as is and call it a day and do it again in 60,000 miles. So Chris Bretz, can you talk about specific problems with the 2012 generation Corolla? What is the highest miles you've seen on them? So Chris, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I have somewhat of a critical opinion of the 2009 to 2012 generation Corolla, actually 2013. They are good cars, but they're a little bit of a drop in quality, feeling-wise, not, reliability-wise. But they're okay, is the word for them. 2009, 2010 are the worst years to buy because they had the most issues. And going forward in 2012, that engine is very susceptible to oil consumption. If you don't change the oil on time, 100,000 mile plus, you're going to have oil consumption. That is one characteristic of that engine. Variable valve timing rattling on cold startup. That is less common in the later ones, but very common in 2009, 2010. CV boots are notorious to tear. Front timing cover notorious to leak, especially in the earlier ones. The later ones seemed a little better. But one problem notable for that model that is still going on, I actually just had one last week, the ground next to the battery is notorious to corrode, and then that's the only wire of the ground, and you'll have all kinds of electrical gremlins. People replace alternator, battery over and over and over and over just to find out it's a loose ground or a bad contact on the ground. So that's the main thing. Otherwise, if it's been maintained, it's an okay car. Just feels very cheap on the inside, doesn't drive well. The 2009-10 drives actually better than the 11, 12, and 13, especially in the sport model. I would not buy the sport model just because of the way the steering feels. They had an update on that to make things better at the time, but overall, they're okay. Shaw G Autos 2006 Prius. I'm going to change the oil control valve and the little mesh filter under it. Any tips? Run them PO11 every few thousand miles. So there's nothing specific to that. It's just one 10mm bolt, pops out, pop the filter, place everything, life is good. If this does not resolve the issue, you're gonna need a VVTI gear. It's just one in these, replace it, and call it a day. So, Griffin Shallow, I am the guy with the 2013 CT 200H. Do you have any advice? What I need to do between 113,000 miles and 200,000 miles? Just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Griffin. So, between 113 and 200,000 miles, at 120,000 miles, you're going to want to change your spark plugs. Continuing on, the maintenance every 5,000 miles, change the oil, rotate the tires. At 120,000 miles, if you've been following the 60,000 mile rule for the transmission fluid, change that. That is nothing expensive, a very DIY if you work on your own car. Otherwise, filters, brakes, things as needed. With hybrids, you're probably still on your original brakes, potentially. So at some point, over 100,000 miles, you're going to need the brakes eventually. And otherwise, really just coolants every 50,000 miles whenever your last replacement. And the only thing you need is more miles on that thing. They're really good cars. They just keep going forever. Anthony Lane, 2008 Toyota Orion V6 2GR. For those in the US or Canada, that is the equivalent to a Camry. I know they have a Camry over there, but the Orion is like a hot Camry, if you call it that. I don't know. It's an Australian model. Got a few questions on it. If I remove the butterfly valve for the airbox, will it affect anything? Because I find it useless, stops airflow. So I want to make sure we get the language right here. We're talking about the air intake that kind of takes air from the front and goes into the airbox. If you remove it, it's really not going to do much. Hopefully it does something, an acceleration, but the effect is very minimal. If that is what you're referring to, you can remove it. It doesn't really do much. Most of the time, it doesn't even work. Honestly, most of these cars doesn't work. Colorado, boo. How you doing, man? Does everyone have their CCN shirts? Do you? If you don't, and you're interested, they're in the channel merchandise. Go to channel, go to the store, and you'll find them. Lala G, you don't have one? Man, we should send you one. Carmen Monte Carlo, 2008 Prius, 225,000 miles. For years, I've been able to put 3 to 4 gallons into the bladder from empty. I've recalibrated the gauge. A preset member suggested replacing the fuel filler neck assembly. The car also sometimes stumbles when cold, as if suddenly lost fuel pressure for a few milliseconds. Recently cleaned mass airflow and replaced plugs. So the biggest thing with that bladder tank is the tank itself. It's really everything is there. The filler neck, if you have a blocked vent, potentially, but honestly, they're notorious for that. The only thing is it could be a charcoal canister as well. And that's something with these Priuses with that bladder tank. The bladder tank is just, it's ridiculous. That's the word for it. It is a lot of complication for nothing. They took that out really quick. But honestly, it could be a tank, could be a canister. You're going to have to look into the vent. This is something that needs a little bit in-person diagnosis. Lewis Hain, still not totally clear. Is the brake one relay in the underhood fuse box part of the ABS system? So I am actually, because you never commented, I asked you, Lewis, to comment. I don't know if you did. I didn't see it. I can actually pull that up and let you know. If you all, I'm sorry for hogging the live stream, but this is something that I promise, and I keep my promises. Let's look it up. Yeah, that's not good. Come on. So I'm going to answer one more question, Lewis, and I'll get back to you. Just hang tight. The page is loading. Things are very slow here. So try engine start shaking when it warms up. Could be a throttle body. That's the main thing I would chase after. You didn't tell me what model you have or what car, but usually with Toyotas, the throttle body is what causes this. So let's move on to the next question. T-Bone, I did a coolant drain on my 2017 Sienna, and it was a mess. Oh yeah, it is a mess. But I completed it. Hopefully you can still make a video. Yes, I want to make a video on the updated 2GR for the coolant replacement. It is a pain because they removed the bleeder. You have to do a specific process. You have to squeeze the hoses when the car is off, then start it, squeeze them, shut it off, do it multiple times, and then it'll actually work, but it is a pain still. Would have been nice if they left that bleeder on, but they didn't, and that was not so very nice of them to do that. So for Lewis Hayne, I am looking at the diagram right now, and you have two relays, brake number 1 and brake number 2, and that is going to be found in the fuse block on the driver's side, Lewis Hayne. That's where you're going to find that. So there's two relays, brake number 1, brake number 2. You're going to find them in the fuse block on the driver's side, the one right next to the battery. So Jorge Lopez, T-Bone again. In addition, blood the brakes without the clear tubing on the nipple of the caliper. Was that necessary, or could I complete without, which I did? Yeah, I mean, all you're doing with that clear hose is just to contain the mess, if you would. So we're going to dribble all over the place, but you're good. Don't worry about it. Jorge Lopez, how many drains of fills are required per Toyota to replace the transmission fluid? We just covered this. One drain of fill every 60,000 miles. Anthony Elaine, 2008 Orion Supercharged. See, the Australians get the cool version of the 2GR. We don't. We are very jealous. I should leave your question and not answer it because we're jealous. But I love you, so let's do that. If you don't want that supercharger, just ship it over. I'll take it. I want to install a cold air intake for the supercharger, make more noise and more in it. You could. I mean, it really doesn't do. In a supercharged situation, actually, it could help. In a normal car, it doesn't. Give it a shot. Make sure that filter is good, though, because you don't want contaminants going in. Chris Spretz, what do you think of the Lexus ES330? Are they even higher quality than a Camry? I see them occasionally. Ultimately, chose the Corolla. So the ES330 is actually an excellent car to buy, and it's very comparable to the Camry. Yeah, it has maybe nicer interior a little bit. You're not going to find one with cloth seats. They usually have a little bit better option, kind of comparable to an XLE Camry of that same year. The ones with the 3.3, but they are a really good car with maintenance. They have at this time, they're a little older. They're going to have their common leaks and, stuff from old car stuff, but nothing major, catastrophic engine transmission. They're usually good. They do have a timing belt that needs replacement, but overall, that's a very good car. So, hello, friend. Sorry, I cannot read that. I believe that is Hebrew. I wish I would read Hebrew, but I don't. So, hello, friend. You make great thing, especially with Toyotas that don't give us any information. Everything is a secret. It's not a secret with Toyota, but remember they have a lot of red tape. See, me, I just turn on my camera, ramble what I want to ramble about, and try to help you guys the best that I can, and try not to insult anybody or affect any powers that be. And I couldn't care less really what secret there is no such thing as secret. But Toyota has a lot of red tape. They're a corporation. Everybody is just waiting for them to slip so they can sue them, which is not nice. I wish they would be more forthcoming about things, but it's not because they're trying to keep secrets. I think it's because they have a lot of red tape and people take things the wrong way all the time, and that's just how it is with the secrets things. Jerwin Tabor, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you joining the live stream. So, the chat jumped again. Hang on. Here we are. Bruce Wayne, happy Super Saturday to you and your family. Well, thank you very much, Bruce, and happy Super Saturday to you and everybody else. And this is actually, I was debating if I should talk about this or not, but I think it is a big deal. If you are in the U.S., we never forget. Today marks a very important occasion, and I care about these things a lot. This is our country, and for everybody else, today is 9/11, the anniversary of 9/11, and it's a very tough day for in the United States in 2001. Victor Montero, what do you think about Saabs? Have you ever worked on one? Oh boy, that is a very good question. See, Saabs makes interesting cars. At least they did before GM decided to wipe them out of the face of the earth. But I don't really have much experience with Saabs other than they are odd and weird, and they have their people that are fans. They love them. They're not exactly great cars, but they're very odd and interesting. Everything that is odd and interesting will have their following. I think they are as odd and interesting as a Yugo. That's just my opinion. I don't see them particularly good looking or great. I don't see what's great about them other than the company that makes them makes also fighter planes, which doesn't really affect the car. But should you buy one, especially the later ones? Absolutely not, because GM wants nothing to do with them. You're going to have a very hard time finding parts, finding people to work on them. They're still weird and they have their things. No, unless you're a hobbyist and you're kind of a fan of Saab, don't buy them. That's the bottom line. So, another question, 2013 Camry. I say, and I, sorry, the name is a little difficult to read. 2013 Camry SE 75K miles, very good condition. All been changing oil and the filter on time. Any preventative maintenance I should be looking for when my 2013 Camry gets to 100,000 miles? So if you haven't replaced the coolant already, which I hope you have already, change the coolant. At 120, you're going to change your spark plugs. Otherwise, just a general good inspection, and that's that. CCC, how you doing, my brother? I hope you're doing, man. Lexus, man, I hope you're doing well, my brother. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. Andrew, 2017 RAV4 XLE, 75K miles, throttle body cleaning. If you move the valve position by hand, would you damage the motor? To avoid this, I've heard to turn the key, accessory, floor the gas. Yes. So you do not damage the motor if you turn off the keys out of the car, and you move it slowly. I did the video on this, and I showed you how to do this. Just don't violently open it. Just slowly open it, and you should be good. But I don't like the method where you turn the key and push the gas pedal to the floor, because guess what happens if your battery decides to go weak and die in the middle of this process? This motor will turn back so violently it could actually hurt you. So be careful if you're going to do that. That's why I didn't recommend that. Yes, you could do that, but there is a risk. So be careful. Turtle 2802. Is the Toyota Camry Hybrid 2022 having any battery issues, 12 volts? I heard it drain sometimes, at least for the older models like 1819. 2022 Camry is not out yet, or at least in the Chicago area, they're not out. They are scheduled to be out hopefully soon, or maybe until January. Nobody knows. They're a little bit in limbo in that. But the battery issues specifically targeted 2022 models because of the DCM. I haven't really seen 2021s. I have to look at the publication, but it's 2020 that are mostly affected, potentially some 2021s, but definitely not later 2021s. It's just a software update. Even if you buy one that has it, it's a software update that fixes the issue. We'll test the battery. If the battery is bad, then just replace it and call it a day, and that's it. And this is not a reoccurring problem. That's I want you to get that out of it. Sean Healy, 1MZFE and notorious knock sensor problems. What causes knock sensor code tripping besides a faulty knock sensor or harness? Nothing, honestly. Usually what happens with these is a little critter gets underneath there, either chews up the harness, or just from age, the wire harness gets brittle, breaks, you have codes. Or in some rare cases, usually it's the harness, but one or two of the sensors will just open circuit from age, and that's normal. That does happen. So every time you're going in, always replace the sensors, even if they're good. Always replace the harness, even if the sensors are the problem. So Art Vandelay, other than TechStream or Snap-on, what other Pro-type scan tools good for Toyotas? Hotel Launch Think Tool Pro. Actually, I found a scan tool that is really good, and at a price point is good. I am working to review it. Hopefully, I'll film that review for you guys and have it ready sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'm filming it this week. But the thing, Hotel is very good. I'll admit that. Hotel is pro level, but their prices are also starting to creep up a little bit. Launch is good. Think Tool Pro. I think they contacted me. I didn't like their prices of their tools, but I haven't really tested them. I just didn't like what their scan tools can do for the price point. But this tool that I found is from a company that probably nobody heard of. Capabilities are very impressive. Coming up, hopefully, in the next week or two with more details and kind of a detailed review. So you see why I think they are good. Folks, for reference, I want to say this. I get hundreds of emails from all these companies. Some of them send me their products. I don't like it, and I just ship it back to them. I'm not in the business of selling you products. If I see a product that is good, very good, the price is very good, and I think I like the product, I'm going to review it, not to sell you the stuff, but just to tell you about it. But there's more. For every 10 products that I get sent, maybe one makes it, maybe not. I'm just picky. I don't like to do that whole sales pitch, whatever. If I see an impressive product, I'm going to share it. Otherwise, I just put it in the box, send it back to them. That's my policy on this. You can't buy me by sending me your product, but I don't do that. So if your product is good, it's good, and people are going to hear about it. So Mark Fiorella, why the plastic oil filter in the Highlander? So folks, this is debated, and a lot of you have asked about this, and I'll be honest with you. There's some company, Baxter, whatever, that makes an adapter. So you can basically take that plastic oil canister filter style, take it out, put the adapter, and now you can use a spin-on filter, easier for DIY. I can understand that. But I don't see an issue with the plastic oil filter in my 2012 Camry. I had the original plastic filter, and I had no problems with it. If you don't over torque these, or if you don't over tighten these, they're really last the life of the car. I understand they're plastic, but they're good. They did that for various reasons. Yes, they could have done the metal version, maybe weight reduction, cost reduction, whatever the case may be. But I don't see a problem with them. I don't want you to see them as a problem. Just don't over tighten them, and you're going to be good. KMN, and what mileage would you change the diff and transfer case fluid 2019 Highlander at 3 years or 30,000 miles? More 30,000 miles than 3 years, especially the first one. After that, you can go a little bit further, up to 50,000, but the first replacement at 30,000 is a good idea. Blake, just got an 09 Tacoma V6 automatic transmission. Sometimes I have a delay going to drive, usually from reverse. I know it needs the automatic transmission service. Should that fix help it? It does shudder a little bit when lugging uphill. Yes. The first thing I would do is replace the transmission fluid if the mileage is not extreme, and make sure the level is right. And that's the first thing I would do, and most likely is going to fix that. That's the typical start of bad fluid on these. Frank EV, looking for a family car, torn between the Highlander and the Sienna. Which one would you recommend? I don't drive the car very much, but need a family car. So, Frank, here's the main thing. Both of them are good as a car, as reliability, mileage, all that good stuff. But function, I usually tell you it depends on you, but I don't want to throw the ball back at you. That's what you're asking me. Here's the bottom line. Here's some of my personal opinion on this. If you have 3, 4, 5 kids, first, God bless you for having this many kids. That's very difficult. But if you have a lot of kids, the Sienna will be more comfortable for them, especially if your kids are more on the older side, like, teenagers, pre-teenagers that are a little taller. The Sienna will be more comfortable to seat all those people, especially the third row seat. And their luggage, you'll still have area in the back to put some stuff and be very comfortable. The Highlander is not. Let's put it this way. The third row seat on the Highlander is not impressive. It is not very comfortable. It's okay. But if you're planning to use this whatever car you buy, you don't drive it much, but every once in a while you'll take a long trip, you do all that, then Sienna starts to make more sense. The Sienna is the ultimate family with young kids car. If you don't have young kids and you occasionally, I don't know, if you are in the older generation, you have grandkids maybe, you babysit for them or you watch them or you want to take them around, possibly the Highlander would be better. If your use for all that space is occasional, not always, the Highlander will have a little bit more of an appeal, if you would. You'll not feel it this giant behemoth like the Sienna. and it'll be more of an SUV type. You'll feel it. It could be better to drive. The Sienna will have better visibility, but I don't know. The minivans do have their minivan thing that it hangs on with them, the reputation wise. But if it's very utilitarian, a very hard choice between the two. Honestly, I would drive both. They both have the same engine, similar miles, similar feel the way they drive. Although if you're not looking at a hybrid, the Highlander will have a V6. It'll have more power, but also have the 8-speed, which can be annoying. So I would drive both with the mentality of, will I need all the features that this car offers versus the other one? And then that'll help you make a better decision. So, David Nixon, I have a 2021 Toyota RAV4 Prime. My question is, why, when I am in EV mode and have plenty of miles left on the charge, 35 plus with cruise control, at about 65 miles an hour, does the gas engine kick on? So they are limited to 84. I'm interested why it is 65. The only thing I can think of is, did you turn on the defrost? I know we're in the middle of summer. I don't think that is the case. But there is some criteria of certain things that will actually trigger the gasoline engine on and cancel EV mode. Those, I don't remember all the conditions on the top of my head. You know, the obvious ones: your very cold temperature, you went over 84 miles an hour, what was the other one? You turn on the defrost. Certain things will trigger EV mode out and the engine will come on. You do want to look in your owner's manual at these conditions and see if any of them are happening. That's the first thing I would look at. But 65 miles an hour should not be close to it unless there is a triggering factor that's coming on and causing it to come off EV mode. So Alan Holmes, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you for watching the live stream. Here's your question. I've heard it's not good to let a standard internal combustion engine vehicle idle. What about a hybrid? So hybrids, when they idle, they're not going to idle all the time. The engine will come on, shut off, come on, shut off. So it's less of an effect on them. But still, if you have the AC on, running, blaring, if you're doing this every single day, it's actually not good for the AC. You'll see high pressures because the condenser doesn't have enough airflow through it. But otherwise, it's fine. With hybrids, it's better because it'll shut off, come on. So it's a little bit less of a, it's not just idling all the time. Alfredo Cuervo, have a 2014 Toyota Tacoma. Want to know, when should I change transmission fluid when I don't tow anything? I would still change it every 60,000 miles or 6 years, whichever comes first, and call it a day and repeat it again at 60, and life's good. So LT just purchased a RAV4 hybrid. First scheduled maintenance is at 1,000 kilometers, but just an inspection, not an oil change. Does it make sense to request an oil change? Greetings from Peru. I would request an oil change, honestly. I mean, 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers, let's specify. That's right, just under 1,000 miles. But I would request an oil change if you're planning to keep this car for 10, 15 years. But if you're only keeping this for 3 to 5 years, not worth it. But if you are keeping it long, this is a good investment at the beginning. Small investment to kind of prolong the life of your engine as much as possible. So KM Klein, I used your awesome video to change spark plug, PCV valve, clean throttle body of my 2013 RX 350. Took a while, but your video made it easy. Well, I'm glad I could help, Klein. Folks, this is a criticism that I've gotten recently, and I have to share it with you. A few viewers have said this. Some of my videos and some of the jobs that I do, I'll refer in the video and say, this is easy, this is not hard. And people take that and run with it, and then it becomes into a complicated mess. It's hard for me to start gauging, when I've been doing this long, it's hard for me to gauge what is easy for a DIY mechanic, what is not easy. Recently, I was in touch with a viewer that came here, brought their car, and I was watching them kind of do simple stuff. They were helping me with a job. They wanted to help. It was very interesting for me to start to understand that mindset. I don't really work with DIY mechanics at the dealership. I work with junior mechanics and I see some of their struggles, but they're different because this is your job. You got to do it. But DIY mechanics, I'm trying to kind of slowly connect and understand where the struggles are. And I'm starting to see them, certain things when things go south. Bolt brakes, can't access this, I don't have the tool for this, I don't. So I'm trying to slowly. So when I say something is easy, I mean it with the best intentions, but sometimes they're not for you. And I understand that. I'm starting to slowly adjust the language so we can set the expectations correctly. Robert Leroux, sorry if I said that incorrectly. 2021 Venza is not rated for a trailer, but a 2014 RAV4 is. The platform of both are supposedly identical. Can I put a trailer hitch on my 2021 Venza? That is a question that is pending. I actually sent a request to get an official answer for that. Nothing yet. It should be the same. It's the same engine, same weight. I'm looking at everything. This absolutely makes no sense that you can't tow with the 2021 Venza, but you can with the RAV4. It makes no sense. Do not have the specific answer why that is. I don't see a reason why not. They both have the same thing, but if I hear something, I will update you guys and let you know. Speaking of updating you guys and letting you know, I don't remember if we said this in the live stream, but I will say this one more time. If you have a latest generation Highlander hybrid or a regular Highlander, and you have fueling issues, you're filling up and it's not matching and things are all over the place, there is a campaign that fixes this for certain models. This is just a simple software update, nothing crazy. Make sure you get this done, because I see so many people just bashing the Highlander because of this. Yeah, there is a fix for it, but if you don't know about it, don't just continue to bash the car for others and ruin it for others because you are not informed. If you have one of those cars, or if you're looking at it and you hear these concerns, there is a fix for it. And if you own one, just call your dealership, have them schedule you in and have it taken care of, and you will not have these issues again, unlike the RAV4 that needed replacement of parts and all that. This is just a software update. Joel Mora, this is a very good question. Is the Prius the same as a Corolla hybrid? Yes and no. You guys love this one. So yes, when it comes to the platform itself and when it comes to the hybrid system and the battery and kind of the behind the scenes stuff, but that's where they end. The Prius is a specialized car. It always have been, and I believe it will continue to be that way. It's that wedge shape that some people, that you can either love it or hate it. There's no in between. That is a purposeful design for aerodynamic. It's always, the Prius will always get the highest gas mileage of the bunch, but you're gonna need to make a decision here: Prius or Corolla. They both have the same thing. They both have similar miles, but the Corolla is a normal car. It's not a specialized. Doesn't have that crazy shape. Doesn't, it comes to a personal choice. There's no one that's better than the other. They're just different options of the same thing, basically. I will be, and this is for everybody that requested this, I will be working on the review for the common problems video for that generation Corolla, the latest one. Hopefully this week I'm getting finally a car. You don't understand how hard it is to get cars these days. Other than awesome viewers that bring me their cars, it is really hard for me to get these demo cars to do the videos on in these days, because they don't even have cars to sell. Why are we going to do a review and talk about a car when they don't have cars to sell to begin with? So Robert Wignet, can I email you my codes and get your thoughts? I would pay you for your time. Well, Robert, it is not about paying me for my time, which I appreciate. Thank you. But emails are becoming difficult. I actually stopped answering email for a bit now because things have gotten a little all over the place. Chicago service request still works. That goes somewhere else. But leave a comment on at the end of this live stream. Leave a comment on this video or any video. Put me your codes and we'll talk about it and I'll help you. If you don't get a response within 24 to 48 hours from me, post it again. I've had one viewer that posted the same question on every single video. All that does is it pushes folks off the list, and now you're just creating havoc. Please only post your comment once. Wait up to 48 hours. If you don't hear from me, post it again. That's I'm telling you this because I want to help everybody, but in the end, I can't help everybody sometimes. But if we all work together, we can make this better for everybody. So, Randy Millsaps, I have a 2006 Tacoma base two-wheel drive. Can I switch the steering wheel to the one that has a volume control? It is not as simple as switching the steering wheel because the spiral cable, or also called the clock spring, will have to be changed. There's some wiring behind that to the radio and all that. Some of this might be already wired, but there's a little bit more to it than just the steering wheel. There's a spiral cable, the connection to the radio, all that. Eric Marrero, 2000 Avalon XLS. I love these things. I like that Avalon. 321,000 miles. I like it even more. See why? I just had 1301 CAN communication malfunction 1241, low or high power supply. What should I check for these two C codes? So, your battery is the first thing. If the battery is weak, replace it, service it, whatever the case may be. But that is the first thing that I would look at, because the first one is kind of a over generic code, but the second one, that is an indication of low power. Your battery could be fine, your car might be starting, but if the battery is weak, when you crank the car, it could be dropping so much that the ABS computer just doesn't like it, and it just wants this better voltage. So it's going to set that code. So start with the battery, check it out, and go from there. So Ward Willis, how do you pass emissions in a CT after doing the drive cycle 1,000 times? So some of these drive cycles are interesting. They're difficult to replicate, honestly, other than keep trying and making sure you're meeting the criteria for each drive cycle. There's not much you can do. Sometimes they lock and they just don't want to do it. Reset the memories, reset the monitors again, restart. Sometimes that'll make them go, but some of them are difficult, I agree. Roland Monzano, what is the most common problem on 2012 Camry 2A RFE engine four-cylinder that I have to keep an eye on for? Oil consumption. If the oil has not been changed on time, and unfortunately 10,000 miles is not cutting it lately, but maintenance is the biggest thing. That engine is a very good engine, and if it's been maintained right, it could easily get 300,000 miles without skipping a beat. And they're not notorious for oil leaks, very rarely from the front cover, and not on that Camry, not as much, at least on that Camry year. The one thing with that car in general is the torque converter. They're notorious to shutter. There's an update and an actual official fix for it. But otherwise, that is a good car. That is a good engine. Maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. Number one thing on any Toyota you buy. So, Manuel Garcia, can I connect a secondary battery on the OBD2 socket to avoid the 12-volt battery to go too low? I read it's still okay until 4 amps. I have to park my CHR for many weeks in the underground parking. Don't do that for storage. That is not a good idea because you're keeping things alive. Supplying power to the OBD2 connector is okay when you're doing it just to swap a battery to save the memory. That's okay. Temporary, but long term, don't do that. That is not advised. You do want to actually just unplug your 12-volt battery, unplug the ground, leave it to the side. That'll reserve the battery as much as possible. But if it's too long, you're saying many weeks, but if it turns into months, I would expect this battery to be dead. That's just the way it is, unfortunately, with these. So Bruce Wayne, do you recommend adding an inline filter like magnifying to my 2004 Runner automatic transmission? I wouldn't, because the one thing with these 2004 Runners is they're, I don't want to say they're notorious, but from age, we've seen a lot of the radiator, the original radiator, if you still have an original radiator, it's pretty interesting. The cooler mixes coolant and transmission fluid, and that turns into a giant disaster. It just could easily ruin the transmission. So I wouldn't put a filter because we're not really, if you're changing the fluid, and on that it's every 30,000, you shouldn't have contaminants and issues. But I would change the radiator if it's original. Just flat out go ahead and change it. Do a little test for coolant, transmission fluid, and call it a day. Georgios Georgiakas, sorry if I said that incorrect. Just got the new Corolla hybrid. I am not pleased with the wind noise and high speeds. What is your opinion for overall quality of the new generation? Hmm. I I love you, my brother, but I will tell you the truth. The Corolla is an entry level car. It is basically the bottom of the barrel, almost thanks to the Yaris that is below it, but it is an entry level car. At that price point, you're not going to get too high of materials. Yes, the wind noise is an issue with the Corolla, but that's by design to keep the price down. The Corolla hybrid has so much in it technology wise that the price could easily be a lot more. I mean, it could be easily comparable to a Camry, and at that point, who's going to buy it? Might as well buy a Camry, because the Corolla has so much. They had to compromise somewhere to keep the price low. And yes, they did compromise on the insulation, and that's unfortunate. And some people will not mind it. Okay, it's loud. I'll just raise the radio, and that's it. Some people, I am one of those people actually, it will drive me crazy. And it's too loud. It is too loud. But let's distinguish one thing. There is the normal wind noise, but you could have an issue of whistling from a part. It should not whistle. It should just be a uniform wind noise that is not well insulated. If you have a whistle, that could be something that can be fixed easily at a dealership, and that's that. But if it's a general wind noise from the car, they are not the quietest car in the world. I'll admit that to you, because of their price level and their positioning in the lineup. You know, they can't be as quiet as, say, a $90,000 Land Cruiser. That wouldn't make sense. So Dylan, we're talking about the Venza. If it's not rated for it, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it until we have an official answer why, because it gets if there's a small change and there's a specific reason why they didn't, I wouldn't just go ahead and tow with it until we know exactly why. So no Scoth, good evening. All the 0W20 synthetic oils the same? I've been using the Toyota 0W20 and was curious about the GR 0W20 for the Supra. Any benefits, or is it Supra oil thicker oil? So here is the exact reason for this. The Toyota 0W20, the bottled one, I think I have one right there behind me, that is made by Mobil. It is specifically formulated for Toyota engines. So can you technically use that on other stuff? Yes, oil is oil to a certain degree, but it has specific additives that help Toyota engines last longer. Do the other oils from other manufacturers have similar additives? Yes, but this is one that is specific. It has exactly what these engines need. The oil from the Supra actually doesn't come from Toyota. It comes from a different company. One time a viewer actually wrote down which company it comes from. It is specific to BMW engines. Can you use other oils? Absolutely. Can you use the regular Toyota oil? Absolutely. But does it have everything that specific engine needs? It might not. It might do. I don't know. I'm not the oil guy. But stay with what you've been using. There's no benefit of using the Supra oil in a non-Supra. That's the way I see it. And folks, some people have I don't know if you've seen the video where I worked on my dream car, the Mercedes, whatnot. I own a Mercedes, and it's a car I love. It's not the reliable car or whatever, but it's just a toy car that I enjoy. Some people have criticized that I've used Mercedes branded oil, and they were like, that is ridiculous. You're stupid. You're overpaying for it. Overpaying? That was actually cheaper than the cheapest oil I could find that is correct for that car. Same thing with the Toyota oil. So many people just go buy other oils when you can buy the specific oil for this car for the same price and sometimes less if you shop around. Most dealerships will have this oil sitting on the shelf. They just want to get rid of it, and they can. Nobody buys it. So they'll slash the price, and you'll end up buying it for cheaper. So always shop around for that, because that is actually very good oil. I wouldn't put any other oil in my Toyotas other than that. Not because this is the gold, but it's much easier for me to walk half a minute, go to parts, and get oil. So why am I going to go somewhere else to buy my oil? David and Elizabeth, 2010 RAV4 2.5 4-cylinder, going to change the ATF and filter with OEM parts, Okay to drop the fluid at full operating temp and let it drain overnight. Also, does the core gasket need adhesive? So you're good at doing that. You can leave it overnight. There's no problem. But if are you dropping the pan? If you're dropping the pan, there is, I wouldn't call it, it's not a cork gasket. It's actually a metal gasket. Metal that has something infused on it. There is no adhesive. It's just, drop the pan, change the gasket, slap it back on, and life's good. If you are doing that, if you're dropping the pan, depending where you're doing this, are you doing this outside? Is it very humid in the area? If it is, put the pan back overnight. I wouldn't leave it overnight like that because that's a bit much. But otherwise, you're good to leave it overnight, especially if you're just draining the drain plug, and you should be good. Kenny D, 1996, Toyota Camry, brake upgrade, T100 brakes. Will my stock rim work with the bigger calipers, or do I need to upgrade the rims also? Honestly, brother, I haven't done this myself. This is kind of outside the dealership realm of things. We don't really do such swaps. Your best bet is this is going to be trial and error, or find someone else that has actually done this swap. The easiest way to know, actually, if you're going to clear the brakes or not, look at the size of the wheel of the Tacoma, if you're a Tacoma, and a T100. Are they both 15-inch, 16-inch, 17-inch? If they are the same, chances are 100% you're going to be okay. If they are not, if your Tacoma, for example, is a 16-inch or 15-inch, and your T100, for example, is stock with 17-inch, likely you're going to have a problem. But if you both have the same wheel size, it's going to work because it's the same wheel size. Okay, so let's see. Hello from Austria. Hello, sir or ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us. Spider Logan, thank you so much for joining the live stream, sir. So, last generation Corollas, what about the longevity of the laser clad intake valve seats? I haven't really had issues with those. The previous generation, not the when you say last generation, not the 2014 to 2019, that's the last generation, but the generation before that, they did have an issue with the cylinder heads where they had an air fuel ratio imbalance because the seats were not good, they were leaking. That affected, I'm trying to remember here, I drew a blank on this. It affected random cars from 11 to 13, but it was not as prominent. I mean, I've done maybe 3 or 4, I don't even remember. They're not as common as you think, but yes, that was one issue. And they'll have an air fuel, I don't remember the exact code, but air fuel ratio imbalance, and the car will kind of have a weird idle and a run weak. It doesn't have enough power because the valves are leaking. Right Lane Hog, good to see you, sir. I hope you're doing well. So Abyssal Soul 621, 2006 Sienna, 192,000 miles. A little shutter moving off and ending at about 20 miles an hour. So if this is all-wheel drive, look at your drive shaft and look at your mount for your rear differential. If it is not all-wheel drive, look at your front axles, specifically the passenger side with that bearing and bracket. Could be the bearing is born. If one of the axles is damaged or otherwise, it could cause that vibration. Brian Munoz, how is the new BMW Supra? I don't know how to say this. This is a tough question. So honestly, they're okay. I mean, I see them for maintenance. We saw one for a trans replacement. That was weird. It was leaking, and Toyota doesn't want to deal with it. They just replace the transmission. Like, it's a $5 seal. But okay, you're paying for it. You're the boss. But otherwise, we really don't see a lot of issues. I recently had one that it's actually belongs to someone I know, and it was the same car that it was featured in the video I did about the Supra. They unfortunately spilled coffee over the center console. Didn't make much for it. If it was an accident, they dried it up and cleaned it up, and life is good. But actually, it went underneath the center console right into a connector, and that was a interesting debacle because I had to tear the whole interior apart just to get to that one connector that got wet, and now there's all kinds of warning lights. But otherwise, they've been doing okay. We do have the problem with the oil consumption on the 2021 model. Um, that has been up in the air. No real info on it. Very new problem that there's just not enough of them to really establish a pattern, but we've seen a few cases of those, and it just gets a whole new engine and life's good. Toyota's not even doing anything. Okay, it burns oil. Let's just verify it. If it is, put a brand new engine and call it a day. Don't really have much information on that because they're not really keeping us on the loop what's going on between BMW and Toyota there. But otherwise, I haven't really seen many new issues. No, Scott, thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it. So, Xerox Javiera, 2018 Camry XSE, 40,000 miles. Should I do transmission fluid change or drain and fill? I would do a drain and fill at 60,000 miles or 6 years. You're not at either, so I would keep going for now. The pause, 2008 Tundra fuel gauge reads its quarter tank full, but below that quarter line, it's empty. So, has there been any work on the fuel tank? It could be an issue with the fuel sender. You know, this needs a little bit of testing. Honestly, I wouldn't have a straight answer for this one. There's nothing common on it. Could be the sender, could be the gauge itself. These I don't recall if they have a calibration, but I don't think they do. The newer ones do have a calibration where you can calibrate the gauge, but that's a little older, so I don't think that one has a calibration on it. Best OBD2 connector for Toyota RAV4 plug-in. I am working on that video. You will see it very, very soon. Lala G, I love your recent video. Well, thank you, sir. And if anybody else is watching, it is a video about a 2AR FE engine, the 2.5 liter, the previous 2.5 liter, torn apart, oil consumption over 200,000 miles after live stream. If you haven't seen it, if this interests you, check it out. Anthony W, what are the chances? 2AR FE engine. Was told that my 2014 Camry transmission should not need updated if the shutter is not present. So it does need it. Honestly, the problem with the shutter is, and this just by chance that I found this out from maybe I don't know if I'm not supposed to share it or not, but I'll just tell you. It was the software was causing the issue with the torque converter, but once the torque converter was damaged, now you have to do the software update and the torque converter. However, 2014 models should already have had the update installed. That's the catch here. Specifically, and I don't know if you're aware of this, there is a 2014 Camry and then there's a 2014 and a half Camry. This was the time when the small overlap crash test came out. Toyota has to go in a frenzy because their cars failed the test. So halfway through the year, they had to change it because now there's a new requirement for safety. That's why you had a 14 and a 14 and a half. They made major changes to the structure. The 14 and a half definitely has the update, although we've seen some cases, and that was a big question mark of what's going on, and they did take an update. So if your car does not have the update, there is an updated software for the torque converter shutter only, not for other stuff. I would personally take it because it actually fixes the issue if it hasn't been updated. So we already answered this one. John F. Kennedy, interesting name. 2017 Toyota RAV4 Hybrid Limited, just got 60,000 miles on the counter. What inspection maintenance do you recommend so I can drive another 300,000 miles? So replace you're in the window to replace the transmission fluid. So I always tell you 60, 90,000 miles. The hybrids are a lot more forgiving about the interval for the transmission fluid replacement. This is the earliest I would replace it. It depends on your finances and how everything's going. You have time, but if you want to just replace it. It's not really expensive or difficult. Otherwise, check your filters, do kind of a comprehensive inspection, check everything for leaks. I don't think you're going to find much, but why not check it? Water pump, do check. Then the 2016-18 RAV4 is a very interesting hybrid because it doesn't have the fuel recovery in the tank remember when I told you on hybrids, when you open the fuel tank, you have half an hour to fill it? That is one of the newer models that doesn't have that. So less technology in that section. And then it doesn't have an electric water pump. It has a mechanical one. It actually have a belt. Believe it or not, we still have a belt on a hybrid. What is that? So it does have a belt and does have a mechanical water pump. And we've seen them leak, of course. Why not? So that's one thing I would check. If you see that line on the hood, coolant getting thrown around, that's your first sign. Or if coolant is slowly dropping over time, that's another sign. But otherwise, I mean, 60,000 miles, there's not major stuff to do. So, neodymium, sorry if I said that wrong, is the parking pawl located inside the trans? Yes, it is. So all the parking pawl is for other folks. You notice when you put your car in park, like on a surface that is not very flat, and you let go, the car rolls, and then it hits something and it moves forward and it starts like doing that motion of back and forth. So there's a gear inside the transmission. It is a round gear that has teeth, just like this. The parking pawl is just a piece of metal that sits here. When you put your car in park, that just goes in between two gears. So now when you park the car, when it wants to move, the gear will hit it and unlock the transmission. That piece of metal, the parking pawl, is exactly the size of my finger. Nothing big. So that's why you don't want to slam your car into park when it's still in motion, because what you're going to do is that pawl will come in and it'll start banging just back and forth, and eventually you keep doing that over and over and over a few years, you could break it, snap it right off clean. Now the car will still drive, but you no longer have park. Just put it in park, it'll just roll away to your neighbors. It doesn't want you anymore. So be careful with that. That's what the parking pawl is and what it does. Another thing with the parking pawl, how many of you have put the car in park by mistake, especially the one that has a cable, put the car in park by mistake while still driving? You hear like that giant rattling noise that makes you freak out. Oh my God, the world have come to an end. Well, all of that is that gear is spinning so fast and the parking pawl comes in. It cannot engage per se, so it'll start just rattling on top of the gear. Very dangerous, because if it eventually catches and goes, it'll just snap it right off. It is a mechanical part. There's not really much safety for that. There's a reverse lockout, but there's no park lockout. So be careful. This is only for the models that has a cable. For example, Priuses, like 2004 all the way to now, they don't have a cable. They just have a electronic shifter. So you don't have that. It just has an electric motor that will move that pawl into place or out. When you're at speed, it just won't do that. Smart, it makes sense, but the ones with the cable, simple, old school, they will actually do that, so be careful. So, Derek Chauvin, 2015 Tacoma two-wheel drive, has play of the transmission where the driveline connect to the transmission. Is that normal? 67,000 miles. So a little bit of play is okay. That we've been through that before, but significant play is not. Depends on what concern do you have. Do you have vibration concern? If you don't, then don't worry about it, because some of these, especially like, I'll give you another example of this where people have made a big deal for nothing, for something that's normal. Front wheel drive cars. Lift the car up in the air, grab the axle where it goes to the transmission and shake it up and down. It'll actually move pretty good. And you'll feel like, oh my God, something is broken. That is normal. See so many cars that went to mechanic that doesn't know any better, and they freaking out. Oh my God, something's wrong with my transmission. I actually remember one that got towed in. That was the best one. My mechanic told me that my transmission axle is loose. It's about to fall apart. Yeah, they all do that. Actually, one customer, I had to walk him to another brand new car that was just getting prepped for delivery. I'm like, sir, brand new car. Yep, there's play. Have a nice day. We're done here. That is normal. The worst thing about fixing cars is chasing a ghost. It is the worst thing in the planet. Anybody that has worked on cars professionally or even DIY, it is the worst thing in the planet where you're chasing a problem that is normal. Worst thing. because you're chasing your tail here, trying to figure out a problem, and then you just happen to find another car just like it. Very easy at the dealership to do, maybe harder for independent mechanics to have an exact car come in. And you go drive it and it does the same thing. It's like, so I wasted all this time for nothing because that's normal. That is not good. So yeah, that is there is a lot of these movements that are normal. Robert Sutter, one question: how should I break in a 2022 Prius Prime? Should I not even worry about it? You do have to break in, but you got to understand that the break in is only for the engine. Everything else is already pre-broken in. Not pre-broken, but it doesn't really need breaking. Brakes do, but even lesser degree on a Prime because it has regenerative braking. If I was buying a Prius Prime, here's what I would do. In the first 500 miles, let's say, don't charge it. Use it as a regular hybrid. Let that engine run. Let's get it broken in. As much as possible, if you want, even go to that 1,000 miles, but get that engine running that first 1,000 miles. Because here's what's gonna happen if you just continue charging and charging. You're never gonna break that engine, and you're gonna break it in on a long trip when you run over your EV range, and now you're blasting it on the highway at high RPM, which is not good. So get the braking out of the way. If you want to do an oil change, that is optional but recommended, and call it a day. That way, you don't have to think about it. But is it required? Absolutely. That is with the gasoline engine. It's still a good old hunk of metal that needs a break-in period. So, no name. No name. I'm trying to read the name here. Sorry. 2012 Camry SE 4-cylinder, 127,000 miles. Could you provide your opinion on the importance of replacing the PCV valve on this model? Given how difficult it is to get to, dealers doesn't seem to push it. Honestly, if you don't have oil consumption, if your engine is relatively clean, your throttle body is not getting excessively dirty, and it doesn't have excessive buildup, I don't see a reason to replace it. Look, unless there's contamination on the valve, it should not just clog, and I'm yet to see one clog, honestly. Well, the one on that engine I just did was, but that is a different case that had extreme oil consumption. Typically, I would recommend it for replacement every spark plug replacement at 120,000 miles. But in the cases where it's sitting right there and it usually just don't even charge labor. But on the 2012 Camry, you have time. Don't be in a rush on this. One thing that would make me tell you do it right away is look at the intake. We're starting to see on that 2 Irfe, the intake manifold starts to leak. And the way that you see this is you'll have all kinds of oil all over the intake manifold on the bottom side, not at the top. If you have it at the top, there's another common thing for these. So for some reason, every junior mechanic we've had at our shop always spill oil on the 2 Irfe. It's just bound to happen. And even when we give them the warning when they start, don't spill oil, don't crash the Tundra, and don't lift Tundras with a lot of stuff in the back. That is usually the warning. And don't crash the Supras. Very simple warning when you start as a junior mechanic at a dealership. For some reason, they still do. Just a little bit, a few drops of oil, because we have an automatic gun that fills these cars. And if you just move it a little bit, it'll like overfill oil, like it immediately runs down. Like they designed it like this, and I think there might have been an internal joke with the engineers. It runs down, goes to the side, goes right on top of the intake manifold, right on the ground. So if you see that oil on top of the intake manifold on a 2 Irfe, clean it up. That is not a leak. That is actually from a sloppy oil fill. But if you only see it at the bottom, not the top, now there's a chance somebody cleaned it. But if there's no evidence that there was oil there, and let's say you are a DIY mechanic and you do this and you never spilled oil before, if you see oil at the bottom, we're starting to see intake manifold gaskets that leak on these. It doesn't really cause any issues, but you have so much oil come out. The 2 Irfe, as it progresses, it is an oily engine. It has a lot of blow-by, and that's just the way it is. So you want to, if that is the case, replace the intake manifold gasket, replace the PCV valve, and call it a day. Otherwise, If it ain't burning oil, you're changing your oil every 5,000 miles or less, I wouldn't worry about it because really it is not a maintenance item. Bruce Wayne, 2021 Prius Prime. When the battery runs out and I'm cruising 75 miles an hour on the highway and the engine has to kick in, this can't be good for a cold engine. Well, yes and no. Honestly, it does not kick in at full RPM immediately. They kind of phase it in. It'll come on and then it'll rev up. Some of these Priuses, especially the newer ones, we're noticing that the computer will not allow full rev immediately when you start it cold. And there's not much literature or information. We requested some information on this, but we haven't gotten an answer back. Of course, everybody is understaffed and busy, so we're not getting answers on a lot of stuff. But it seems like they have some logic that limits how the engine jumps up in RPM, especially in the primes. Something that is interesting because it does make sense. You don't want to just immediately rev that cold engine. You want to at least give it a few seconds just to build up oil pressure, and then that's okay. That's better than just flat from been sitting for 25 miles to just jump a high RPM at highway speeds. But yes, there is a small logic that actually mitigates that situation. So let's see where we're at. "2012 Venza 4-cylinder started to make chain sound, looks like coming from the engine. What will be the cause?" So I need to hear this because we've seen some cases with the 1ARFE. The 1ARFE is basically a 2ARFE with a slightly bigger displacement. So it's a 2.7 instead of 2.5. We've seen some cases where the chain snaps, usually caused by the VVTi gear, but we've had a few questionable cases where it was like, is this the VVTi gear that caused this? Does this engine rattle at cold start? If that is all you have, it's not a continuous sound, get that gear taken care of and inspect the chain. If that is not the case and you have this noise continuously, I suspect you might have an issue with the VVTi gear that caused the chain to have an issue. You do need to get this taken care of as soon as possible if this is a continuous noise, because I've seen chains snap and they basically destroy the whole engine. Not pretty when it happens, so get this taken care of or at least looked at very soon. So Derek Chauvin, please don't post your question multiple times because that jams up the chat and takes time from everybody. Just post your question once. If we can get to it in the same session, we'll get to it. If not, then you can leave it as a comment or next live stream. Jalal Al-Karamzmi, sorry if I misspelled that. Forerunner 2018 limited transmission fluid, according to my service advisor, it needs 16 word this through. Sorry, I'm trying to understand this. So I'm assuming you're saying it needs 16 quarts. If that is the case, they are doing a flush, which is okay. If this is a dealership that they are good, they're going to run a flush and they're going to check the transmission fluid level after that. So that's okay. If you don't have a lot of miles, that's okay. Typically, I don't recommend a flush when you have higher miles and you're overdue and you're trying to kind of salvage the situation. But if you're on time, I think you're good. Oh, that's a nice one. D, my rear passenger window just exploded. I'd like more info on that. That's a little important because I would like to know what's going on with that. Noah S, do you fill the non-cartridge style filter before installing? Not really. You know what the best part is? People will do that. They'll say, "Oh, you must do that." I never did that in any of my cars, and never had a problem, folks. Engines will run without oil when you first start them. It's not the end of the world. They'll be fine because even when I'll give you another example. When the engine was new, when it was brand new, it had no oil in it. Yes, they put assembly lube and all that good stuff. We all do that. But then when it's new, even if you prime that filter, well, all the passages have no oil in them. Everything is new. So you're going to prime the engine. But when you're priming the engine, you're also spinning it to build up the oil pressure. So all the passages, when you shut off the car, most of them still have oil. The bearings still have oil. So when you start it, by the time the oil pressure builds, you have oil. It's not that you don't have oil, you do, but it's not a continuous flow. And you're not revving it at high RPM as soon as you start in high load. It doesn't really do much. So if it makes you sleep better at night, sure, it can't hurt anything. Fill it up. But if it's making a mess for you, now you're spilling all over the place, just don't. Just put the filter and call it a day. Honestly, that's the honest to God truth. This is where you start nitpicking stuff that doesn't make as big of a difference. So Robert Wiggins, is Toyota working on a self-driving car SUV? Would you get one? I would. I like, you know what? I love driving, but I also don't love being stuck in traffic on 294 every single day. I just dislike it. I don't like traffic. I have to do it every day. It becomes kind of a chore. So I would get a self-driving car, honestly. And we are there with the 2.5 plus, the Toyota Safety Sense 2.5 plus. It can technically drive itself if you just supervise. I like the supervised part. I wouldn't like a car that there's a mattress in the back seat that I lay down and it takes me home. That's too much. But a car that self-drives on the highway that you supervise and you're watching and you're kind of sitting there chilling, kind of relaxed and not tensed up looking at the traffic, stop, go, especially stop, go traffic is terrible. I would consider it because I think it's a good thing that could help a lot of people, especially those that commute far away. And just if you zone out for a second, it could actually save you from an accident. Some of these systems, believe it or not. So, and it happens. We all drive on the road, and So Toyota 2A RFE, that is the name of the viewer. Very interesting name because we've been saying that engine name a lot today. What's your thought on buying a used Toyota Tundra Limited with 75 to 100K miles on it? So I wish you would have included the years. I am assuming you're talking about the 2007 to 2021. Well, not 21 for that miles. They are good, but you got to check the maintenance. They are a lot more forgiving on maintenance neglect than some of the other four cylinders, but you still got to look at the maintenance. I have a video, it's a 32-minute video. I know it's a long video and it makes the Tundra look like the worst truck to buy in the world, but it is not. I want you to look at that video, write down the info. Every truck you see, you need to check it against these issues. If the perfect truck will have almost none of these issues, that's a truck you want to buy, because some of these trucks will have small issues that you'll drive and everything was good, but then they start bothering you, like a small oil leak here that smokes. Very annoying, very expensive to fix, but is it going to stop the truck? It is not. But nonetheless, you don't want to buy that one that leaks. You know what I mean? So look at the common issues video, and maintenance is the biggest thing still, even though they're forgiving. Still, you want one that's been maintained. There's a lot of these Tundras that have been neglected because it's a Toyota. We're not going to fix anything. No, you still have to maintain your Toyota, even though it's well made. That doesn't mean you neglect it. Horrendous healing. Is there any way to shut the nannies off on a 2008 Tundra besides just pressing and holding the button? I don't know what you're referring to, sir. Could you please clarify that? And I don't know if I will be able to get to the comment. Just leave it as a comment to this video or any other video. Random Dave, 2009 Toyota Camry, 100,000 miles. When cold, crank no start. Changed fuel pump and regulator with OEM. This fixed the problem for 1 month. Now only starts when pressing and releasing the gas pedal 3 times. Then will turn over and runs fine. Dave, I have a feeling, and this is just a feeling. Do you have, there's a few things that I want you to check here, and you might think they are unrelated, completely random, but you do need to check them. First one is the battery. Believe it or not, a weak battery on these will cause that exact condition. Even though it cranks fine, check the battery. Have it tested. The other thing is, you want to look at your overall charging system. especially the alternator. If it's been replaced with the aftermarket, unplug it and see if the problem goes away. The third thing is look at your security light. We've had cases with keys acting up, especially on that year Camry. Look at the security light. Turn the key on, or you didn't specify this might have a smart key. If the smart key, without pressing the brake pedal, press the start button twice. Do you have a security light that is flashing? If it is, you have a problem with the key. Not It's basically the computer not allowing the engine to start. And it'll typically set a code, not to set the check engine light, but it'll be, I think it'll be 1799, something like that, like a mobilizer malfunction or something like that. That is common. We've seen that. It's just a bad key. I don't know why it happens only in cold start. That is the mystery here. But you got to watch the security light. When the car doesn't recognize the key, and this is for everybody else, so you would know how the security light works. When the car is off and the key is outside the ignition or it's outside the car, the security light will start flashing. Security light is that little red light with a car and a key in it. That's typically how it looks like on Toyotas. When you insert the key and turn the key on, when the immobilizer have been disabled, that means the computer looked at the key. I like this key. It's a registered key. It's going to shut off that light. If that light continues to flash with the key on, you have an unregistered key or you have an issue with the key. So that's how you know you have an immobilizer problem, because this problem could not be anything wrong with the car. It's just the key, and the immobilizer disables the engine from starting. So these are the few things that I would look at first. Edgar Esteves. Thinking about a new 2022 Venza hybrid or RAV4 hybrid, which one? So let's put it this way. This is the way I see it. The Venza is like a RAV4 in a suit. Not a very expensive suit, because then it would be a Lexus, but a nice suit, medium price. The RAV4 is more like that platform in jeans and shorts and tennis and good, utilitarian look, because otherwise they're exactly the same. The only difference is, we're depending on this, we talked about this a little bit, the Venza doesn't have towing capacity for some reason, and the RAV4 does, even though they're exactly the same. If you're planning on towing, the Venza kind of takes the Venza out of the picture. RAV4 is better, but otherwise, drive both, see which one you like, because they're exactly the same reliability-wise. All right, folks, so we'll take a few more questions and we'll call it a day here. Juan de la Rosa. CarMax is selling a 2015 Highlander hybrid. When I went to test drive, the battery was dead and they couldn't jump start it. Is this a bad sign for the battery on a hybrid? Really hard to tell, honestly, because some car dealerships just make me wonder, like, how do you not maintain your cars this bad where the battery is just dead? I mean, what kind of image are you presenting to a potential buyer that, I'm going to buy this car, but the battery's dead. It's okay. Well, you just ruined the sale. Who's going to buy that car? Most people will be like, I want nothing to do with this car. It's a red flag, but I would still look at the car, because you could actually use that to your advantage and drop the price down. That's how it works with the car negotiating. You find the littlest thing, you make a big deal about it, it'll bite and you're good. So it's not a red flag, but it's definitely a question mark where I would look at the rest of the car. Is this thing been sitting forever? Why has it been sitting forever? Or it could just be a coincidence that the battery dies. That's not a strange thing on hybrids. The 12-volt battery, not the hybrid battery. Big difference. Ethan replaced chain tensioner in 2011 Corolla, came back with cam correlation code. Spun the engine by hand when installing. Will I have to pull the front cover? Unfortunately, yes. The 2ZRFE, so almost all Toyota engines that have an external timing chain tensioner, they have a little guide at the bottom where the chain wraps around the crankshaft. Very beautiful, because then when you take the tensioner out, the cams are holding. The bottom is also held by a little metal, so the chain goes here, and there's a little metal piece that kind of houses it so it wouldn't roll. The 2ZR doesn't have that, which is a terrible idea. Terrible idea. As soon as you pull that tensioner out, that chain will drop and it'll jump a couple tooth every single time. Sorry to break the news to you, my friend, but pull that front cover. It is super easy to pull that front cover. I'll give you a few notes. I don't know if you are a mechanic or you've done this before or not. I'll give you a few notes nonetheless. Remove the intake manifold and save yourself the giant headache of removing the two hoses right behind the intake manifold that go to where the um, what do you call it? Where the water pump housing is. Remove the intake, pull these two hoses, because I've seen so many techs try to get these two hoses and end up destroying them, and now you have a leak, and now you open a can of worms. Very simple. Be very careful with the chain. Keep in mind that there is not that plate at the bottom. You're going to check it and double check it and triple check it. So you're going to use the paint marks on the chain. Take everything out, pull the front cover out. It's not hard at all. It's actually very simple, very little. You need a few O-rings and whatnot, the valve cover gasket. Make sure all your slack on the chain is where the guide that moves, where the tensioner is going to push on, is, and make sure that guide locks in place. So you're going to push the guide where all the slack is for the chain, and then you're going to push it in. It'll lock, but it'll lock barely. If you just touch it, it'll just jump out and everything jumps out of place. You got to do that and make sure the bottom where the chain sits on the crankshaft does not droop down. If it droops down, it's going to jump time every single time. That is one fatal thing with service with the 2ZR. Never remove the timing chain tensioner if you're not removing the front cover, because the likelihood of the chain jumping is extremely high. That's just the way they are. If you're going to do that, you're going to want to have two people hold your cams, both of them with two wrenches. They usually have either a 24 or 27 millimeter place where you can put a wrench, an open-end wrench. Hold them both, and as you pull the tensioner out, pull the slack in the middle. I hope this is making sense. This might not make sense to most, but I'll just say this real quick because I'm really trying to help. This is an example of how a simple job just turns into a giant job. Not really a giant, but turns into a more complicated job. You're going to pull the chain. So you pull the tension on the chain. You never let it drop, because if you let it drop, it's out of time, and that's that. Not enough where it bend valves, but enough where it have the correlation code. We've all been there, my brother, and it is what it is. That's the part of price of doing repair on cars. So Josh Alford, buying a Tacoma out of state, 350 miles on it. A bad idea to drive that far for a brand new car? Honestly, I don't know how to give you a straight answer here. I would be very hesitant to pay full price on a brand new car that has 350 miles on it. That's just too much miles. I mean, typically with new cars, I want it below 100 miles. Sometimes dealers will trade cars in between each other. So you'll have 20, 30 miles when I drove it from another dealer across the town. That's okay, but 350 miles, that's a bit much. I mean, you're almost halfway through your braking period there. What kind of driving were they? Were they driving gently? I highly doubt that. So I don't know. Honestly, this is one that I'll leave up to you, but I don't have a good feeling about it, if I'm being honest with you, because that's a little too much. Unless the deal is right. That's, of course, at that point, it was a demo car. We've driven it a lot. That's okay in this case. But if you're paying full price, I know there's a shortage of cars, but there's always a shortage of money outgoing from your bank account, and I care about that shortage more. So if you're going to buy new and spend a small fortune, buy one with 10 miles. That's much better. All right, let's take a few more questions. So, Garfield 77. I know the drain and fill is better than flushes. I'm told the exception is a coolant flush, which is better to clean everything. Is that true? Is it okay to go to a place like VIOC? I don't know who VOIC, maybe that is someplace local. I am not sure what that is. But let's talk about coolant flushes, because this has been coming up a lot. Folks, you do not need to flush your coolant unless there's contamination. You will never be able to get the entire capacity of coolant out of an engine, short of tearing the engine apart like we did with the 2A RFA. You'll never be able to get all the coolant out, but that's not the point. Everybody's obsessed with, I want to replace every last drop. That is not the point. The point is when you have total capacity, let's say is, I don't know, 4 quarts. When you replace 3.75, that little bit that is left is okay. It's acceptable. This is where you have to live with this stuff. There is not much you can do about that. But you do need a coolant flush if you have contamination. And the number one contamination here is the adding washer fluid, for example, to the coolant. That has happened. Mixing multiple types of coolant, and now you have a problem. And all you want to do in that case is, and I've seen people, oh, we got to spend all this small fortune to do this, do that. Or you've had severe overheating. And, well, in that case, you're rebuilding the engine, but you want to back flush the heater core. Well, the best way is open one of the hoses, preferably the heater hose that is highest, and just run water through it. Remove the thermostat and run water through it. You don't need a fancy machine with the engine off. You're just gonna basically force water through, give it a point of entry and give it a point of exit, let it run through the whole thing, and that's it. If you're gonna do that at home, that's fine. But don't overpay for a coolant flush. You don't need it. Just replace the coolant, call it a day. Okay, folks, let me see, because Mrs. Carcare, that's telling me about a question that I'm sorry. You know what? She is right. Josh Alford. So Mrs. Carcare, by the way, is a sheriff in town. She's trying to, because I tend to be forgetful sometimes, and this is a bit much for me to keep up with all the comments. I'm trying to have her kind of watch my back and make sure I take care of you guys. So I do apologize, Josh Alford. I misread your question. Buying a Tacoma out of state, 350 miles, that's how far the car is where you're going to pick it up. I am so sorry. You're driving back home. Yes, it is not. You're okay. But just keep in mind a few things. You are in the break-in period for that car. You're driving 350 miles. Try to avoid very hard acceleration, like you're getting on the ramp on the highway and you're just going to floor it to merge in the highway. Try to avoid that, and try to avoid speeds over 65 miles an hour. Try not to set the cruise control as much. Try to go 65, and after 15 minutes, kind of lower the speed to 55, and just kind of vary it back and forth as much as possible. You're not going to go all out and every 2 seconds change the speed. That's not possible. But try to keep those things in mind, where we're not pedal to the metal this thing. Most people don't do that naturally. Most people will all do the break-in stuff naturally because it's a new car. They spend more fortune for it. But these are the things you want to keep in mind. If you are worried about this, Josh, consider a break-in oil change at 1,000 miles and then call it a day after that, and you shouldn't have any issues. I hope that was satisfactory, Josh. Sorry, I misread your question. Mrs. Carcare actually caught it. So she's the sheriff in town. She's watching what you guys say, even if I don't see it. So, folks, I'm going to take 2 last questions. They're going to be random. Let's take the first one randomly. Let me see here. This is actually a good one and relevant to the video I just posted today. Brandon Moa, why don't the dealership do the oil change every 5,000 miles? Good question. Well, I have reserved this answer for a long time. I think it is time I break it up to you. Why does we have the 5,000, 10,000, whatever 1,000 mile oil change? Well, here's the truth. Did you know that the maintenance guide that you have in your car that everybody sticks by and goes by like it is the last word in car maintenance? It is actually the definition for that is this is the minimum required maintenance to maintain your car's warranty, not the car itself. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that is what it is. So if you want your car guaranteed to be covered for 3 years, 36,000 miles on everything, and 5 years, 60,000 miles on the drivetrain, follow this book. But most people who buy Toyotas, they're going to keep it a lot more than 5 years and 60,000 miles. That's why I always tell you, you got to do specific things if you're planning to keep it over 5 years, 60,000 miles, including a transmission, which you maintain your warranty up to 60,000 miles. The rest of that, you're on your own. That's the truth of that. Dealerships are obligated to follow this. Some dealerships will play hero and argue about this, which I don't understand why. If you change your oil at every 500 miles, you come to our dealership, for example. I'll tell you an example because I know the faces. You might get a look like you were just here 500 miles ago. I just want to make sure you're aware of this. Yeah, I know. I just want to change my oil over 500 miles. Cool. Okay. Whatever. It's your car, your money. As long as you didn't forget that you just did it 500 miles ago. Okay, we'll do it every 500 miles. It's up to you. I don't understand why some dealerships will fight. There's only one thing that you need to be aware of. If you are doing this by the Toyota Care thing, if there's international viewers, this might not make sense, or it might be the same for you as well. I don't know. In the US and Canada, I think, new Toyotas come with 2 years, 25,000 miles, free maintenance. So you get 5,000 miles, 10, 15, 20, 25,000 mile services for free. That's included with the price of the car. So when you go at 5,000 miles, they're only going to rotate the tires. They're not going to change the oil. And people have argued and fought. It is free maintenance, even though you paid for it with the price of the car. But it is free maintenance. So you want to make sure that we understand it is free maintenance. People before this free maintenance program did not complain about the cost of maintaining their brand new cars. But today, you're getting it for free, and we're still fighting and complaining about it. You catch my drift here? It is your car that you are taking care of. Everybody is so hung up on the free thing. It's not the dealer that does not want to do it. The dealer needs to get paid. Toyota's only paying for a tire rotation at 5,000 miles. They're not going to do it for free. It's not free. The dealership is getting paid for it through Toyota. So if you want to do the 5,000 mile service, unfortunately, you're going to have to pay for it. At 10,000, they're going to change the oil. 15, you're paying for the oil change. They're doing a tire rotation and the brake inspection and the other stuff at 15. There's a few other things they do. Then at 20,000 miles, they do an oil change. At 25, you need to pay for the oil change. After that, you pay for everything because the program is over. That's why. It's not that the dealership doesn't want to help you and doesn't want, but I've seen dealerships, and through viewers and through few experiments that I've been doing here and there, they will fight you. Oh, no, there is a special break-in oil and you should not do it. 10,000 miles. I don't understand this heroism from the dealership. It absolutely makes no sense to me, because are you trying to push these people to not maintain their car, even though your personal car, you don't take it to 10,000 miles? Why the sudden heroism? I don't understand it. I know in the dealership where I work, they don't do that. They don't care. You come in, you want an oil change. If you've just done it 500 miles ago, they might bring it up. Maybe most likely not. Like, okay, you want an oil change, you get an oil change. You come in with a car that has 200 miles, you want to put a new engine, we'll ask you why for warranty reasons, but okay, you're paying for it. We'll do whatever you want, as long as we're not liable and we're not doing something reckless. That's it. It's a place of business. We do what you want. It's as simple as that. But I don't understand why dealerships argue about this. So Now you know what the maintenance guide is, and they put that severe thing just to cover something else in case, you know, in case something goes south and you're under warranty still. But after warranty, you're on your own. So please listen to the voice of experience. I care about you guys, and I see this every single day where people show up with their eyes dropping to the ground, like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. The prices. It's like, well, you did not really maintain your car as we told you to, but we can't say that. Let's work on some discount. That's how it is every single day at a dealership. It's just people don't take care of their cars. I mean, the things I see at dealerships sometimes. I just saw a Corolla 2020 or 21. Not really sure about the exact year, but it was the newest generation. It had 4,000 miles. It looks like a dumpster. There's food thrown everywhere, spills all over the seats. Seats are already all stained. The headliner's all stained. Scratches and cuts all over the interior. The outside looks like it's never been washed. Dings and bumps everywhere. Looks like nobody has ever cleaned anything. And if anything, everything looks disgusting. Why is that? I don't understand. Look, we're all busy. I work 80, 90 hours a week, sometimes 100. I actually broke 100 a week the other day. I work too much too, but I find time. Or if I don't have the time to clean my cars, then I'm not going to make them dirty to begin with, so life would be better. Just like your home, it's the same thing. But that does happen, and we see that. And you know what? I treat customer cars like I treat my own, because I feel like you're trusting me with your car. I'm going to take care of it like it's my own, because that's the right thing to do. If I do my small part, I don't care if everybody else doesn't. That is their problem between them and God. But I do what is right, and hope for the best. Hopefully, the other end does the same for me one day. But when I see that, it just makes me like, hmm, I'm cleaning the engine cover and I'm taking care of watching it, and then you don't do that. It just absolutely makes no sense. But whatever, I do my part, and the rest is up to them. Folks, let's take the last question. And as the typical theme, if you've been watching my live stream, we'll talk a little bit after that about the live stream. But the last is always first. I'll take the last question now. Troy. Troy Abibu. I just wanted to know, where can I look for the fuse for the front lighter on the 2016 Highlander LE? So you're gonna find a fuse block underneath the driver's floor space. If you look up, you're kind of gonna lean and look up. You're gonna see a fuse block which has a little cover that indicates it's gonna be possibly called power outlet or cigarettes. Some of them will have power outlets, some of them call them cigarette. Your consult your owner's manual, but it's gonna be in that fuse block, and it might not be called cigarette outlet. I'm trying to remember here. It might have been called power outlet. There might be two of them. Depends on, a lot of things. I can't remember every single car exactly, but usually that is the name for it, power outlet. All right, folks. So let's reiterate the live stream schedule here. This is week 3. Next week, the 18th, there will be no live stream, and then we'll come back the week after that on the 25th. For a reminder, if you're watching this the first time, every 3 weeks we have a live stream at Saturday at 7 p.m. The 4th week, the car care nut takes the day off. Must be nice, right? Must be nice to be the car care nut. Well, yeah, I hope I deserve that break. But the break's coming, so I'm very happy. I'm gonna miss you guys, but also we're gonna have a good time with the family and go out and do something. We're thinking of, we have actually a visitor at home, so we'll take her to see the city or something. I don't know. That's we'll see what Mrs. Carcarnot has planned. This is her visitor, so she's gonna decide these things. Guys, thank you so much for watching the live stream. I want to give you heads up on a few videos that are coming up. We have a tire video coming up. A lot of you have been asking about balance and road force and problems with tires. How do I pick up the best tire? That's coming up. I did do a video on oil analysis, and when I think of that, it's a little bit of a fiery video, so I might hold off on it. But we'll see. Maybe I'll just blast it out and hope for the best. But and I am working on the video of our Japanese-made Toyotas better than the ones that are not non-Japanese made. That is actually, we're going to have a very special guest on the channel, and you'll see that that's something you like. Other than that, I'm off. We have a few things to do with the family. So thank you so much for watching the live stream. I really appreciate it. We'll see you guys not next Saturday, the following Saturday to start our next 3 weeks. If you like this live stream, consider giving it a thumbs up. If I missed your question, either join the next live stream, which is in 2 weeks, or leave a comment on any of the videos and I'll get back to you. Guys, thank you so much for watching. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourselves a wonderful weekend.